Hello and welcome to the Hibs Observer post-match debrief after what was, truth be told, an absolutely disastrous day for Hibs here at Easter Road, going down 3-0 to St Mirren. All three goals coming in the first half. Just incredibly poor all round from a Hibs perspective. Patrick, I'll give you the pleasure of going first. Yeah. What is there to say about that today?
Not sure there's much we can say before we get to the 9 p.m. watershed that would accurately sum up certainly the first half, but really just it felt like more than a bad day at the office. It just felt like the first half especially was a shocker. I just think too many players not at the races, not able to do the basics right, and it arguably could have been more than three at the break. I think I've said this before that you need your big players to be putting in big performances, and we just didn't get that today. Thought Ellie Yuan especially was just, I don't know, sometimes he looks well up for it and other times he maybe drifts in and out, he's on the periphery, but today he was just, I just thought really almost like playing with a man down at times. I think anyone who was at Easter Road will have seen the attempt shortly before half-time where there was a pass slightly behind him and there wasn't even an effort to try and keep it in play, and I think that just sort of summed up Hibs' first half performance. Nick Montgomery made three changes at half time. Arguably could have made more. Don't think any player really could have complained too much if they'd been hooked. And then you say the second half performance was marginally better, but it was such a low bar, and it would have been difficult for it to be worse. Some of the new signings coming on, Eliza and who else? Nathan Mariah Welsh. I mean, they brought a little bit to the side, but you'll be looking back at that game and just sort of saying it's a 3-0 defeat and they just never got going, rather than the new signings looked okay for the second half.
Yeah.
So, like I say, it feels far stronger than just a bad day at the office. It was, really, really, really poor. As poor a performance, certainly in the first half, as I can remember at Easter Road. I think you'd be going back probably more than 10 years, maybe even to like Terry Butcher's era, for a performance that was just as kind of gutless and, disappointing doesn't even sound strong enough, but just really, really poor, especially when, we did see some good bits last week at Kilmarnock, and, you would have thought with the new boys coming in and, just a chance to build on what went right last week, that, it'd just be an improved performance. You're at home, you've got the fans behind you, but it did not work out like that at all.
No, it didn't. I was actually sitting at half time, wanting to tweet something about the first 45, and there was like a good few minutes where I kind of struggled to, find what is the appropriate word to describe that first half, because it was just so bad. I mean, to be fair, Nick Montgomery didn't pull any punches when he came out to speak to the media. He was pretty scathing of it. He said outfought, outcompeted, and outran, which is, pretty kind of alarming stuff, because...
Not wrong, though.
No, not wrong. No, not in the slightest. I mean, you can, every players have bad performances. Guys have days where, things just don't come off for them. Mistakes. It happens. Stuff like that happens. Guys giving away penalties, stuff like that happens. But I think, it's especially concerning when you can see that it's just a failure to do the absolute basics of the game.
Mm-hmm.
In the Scottish Premiership, the basics of the game are competing, being up for the game, being in and about your opponent, just having the kind of desire. It is that kind of league. It's physical. It's it can be, it's heart and sleeve stuff a lot of the time, and to not be able to show that, it makes any sort of discussion about systems, formations, individual tactics a wee bit a moot point, because if you can't do any of that, the sort of just the bread and butter stuff, working hard, putting your opponents under pressure, being first to second balls, it's everything else becomes irrelevant. And then when you don't do that against a team like St Mirren, who say what you like about them in general, but they are a side to tend not to fail to do the basics of the game. They are a side who are very well drilled. They give everything for their manager, and if you play like that against a team that are kind of fully committed, you kind of deserve everything that's coming to you, really. And Hibs today, it was, they were punished pretty brutally by St Mirren. In fairness to them, it could have been more. There were other chances in the first half, maybe a couple again in the second when Hibs are chasing the game. And I think the first half was it was just summed up by the fact that Hibs didn't even manage a shot, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think you talk about the basics, and it was just, even when Hibs had the chance to do what they're normally quite good at doing, whether that's, swift counter-attacks, whether it's sweeping the ball from side to side, it just wasn't happening. And, obviously, as you were saying, you can have players just not really being at the races, but it felt like something was off today, and I don't know what that is. I don't know whether it's, you couldn't even say it was down to the large number of new signings, because, obviously, we had Nectar Trianta starting in defence alongside Will Fish, because Paul Hanlon's out ill, and Mizani Maulida made his first start, and then you've got boys coming off the bench. But it was by and large, the same starting 11 that started last week and played really well for sort of half an hour at Rugby Park, and then you would think you would come back to your own stadium and you would build on that after a good week's training, and you pick up where you left off. And obviously, Hibs came very close to winning last weekend. Christian Dodge with that late chance that went just wide. Sticks in the throat, I think, that he scored for Forest Green today on his second debut, but that's the way these things go. And I think for me the most concerning kind of stat, if you like, from Hibs at home recently is in their last, I think, 4 games, they've failed to score in 3 of them. And that's shocking, basically. It's just really, the very least you want to be doing is, trying to get goals. And when you look how top heavy Hibs are, in terms of the talent they've got, and that's even without Martin Boyle, who's obviously be on his way back from the Asian Cup after Australia got knocked out. You look Adam Lafondra coming on today, obviously good to get somebody with his experience back. You've got Dylan Vente, you had there's Eliza Mayenda coming on. You've got Jair, you've got Eli Yuan, you've got Emi Marcondes, Mizani, all these players who could and should be, providing you with so much more. And in the end, I think the closest we came to a goal today was Mayenda's chance sort of right at the end. Obviously, it would have been a consolation, but probably the best chance Hibs had, and just sort of drifting wide of the far post. So you think when you're relying on an 18-year-old kid who hasn't really had, a lot of experience of first-team football, never mind in Scotland, but in the UK, then that kind of tells you where you're at. And, Celtic in midweek, it's, you can imagine the players thinking, at least we don't have a full week to stew about this result. But I know Celtic maybe haven't been as majestic as they were under Ange Postecoglou this season so far, but you would want a reaction from Hibs. You would want them to, at least put in a performance, because I stand by it. If Hibs had played out their skins and St Mirren had played out their skins and it was 3-0 at half time, then it's poor, yes, but there's maybe a bit more understanding that the better team is ahead. I suppose a decent example might be when Hibs played Aston Villa, and Aston Villa obviously took a very, very big lead going into half time, but the gulf was there, you could see it. That wasn't the case today. St Mirren did not have to work particularly hard to be 3 goals up at half time. They were well drilled, well organised, they did the basics well, but a lot of it was just Hibs handing it to them on a plate. And the concerning thing as well, the concerning thing that there's not more than one, but this failure to defend crosses, failure to adequately deal with set pieces, and we've seen this so many times this season under first Lee Johnson and now Nick Montgomery, and it's just that's the basics. And just that's the worrying thing, I think, for the fans, is sort of seeing the same things happen like week in, week out, and no sign of it being changed. Like, they're spending time in the training ground. They're obviously, they're not just sort of twiddling their thumbs, but you think, why can they not do it in sort of game situations, which is when it counts? Why are teams just able to throw balls into the box and, almost be guaranteed a goal? Because, you look at teams doing it. Forfar did it in the Cup. Kilmarnock did it last week. St Mirren did it this week. Celtic will no doubt do it on Wednesday night. And, it just seems like a real sort of soft spot for Hibs at the moment, that they can't deal with anything that comes into the box. And what's more worrying is that it doesn't seem to matter who the personnel is; it's the same outcome, and that's whether you've changed your fullbacks, your centre backs, whatever. And yeah, I feel like I'm sort of bordering on a rant here about how bad it was, but I think there's probably a fair few fans out there who'd be doing the same. Yeah, I mean, the concerning thing, the biggest concerning thing for me is that none of the good bits from last week against Kilmarnock were in evidence today. You can look at the second half and say like there was an improvement, and there was, but that's after you've hooked 3 players at half time.
Yeah, the game's gone.
And the game has gone, yeah. I mean, St Mirren did not have to, really try particularly hard in the second half. And Hibs didn't really create a lot of note either. I think, one shot on target really, tells its own story. So yeah, I don't know where you go from here. I don't know whether you sort of retain faith in the fact that you've got so many new signings who Montgomery obviously feels are better than what he's had in the squad already. He talked on Friday about freshening up the squad. And, once all these players are match fit, they're up to speed, then, Hibs may be this sort of swashbuckling, attacking, defensively solid team that, Nick Montgomery wants to turn them into. But, you would think in the meantime, at least, that you've got, no matter who starts, no matter who plays, no matter who comes off the bench, you've got a team that's capable of, not putting in a performance that was sort of, bordering on amateur.
Yeah,
as they did in the first 45.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like you say. I mean, with the amount of it's a top-heavy side, a lot of attacking players, a lot of talented attacking players, but there just seems to be very little cohesion at the top end of the pitch. Certainly today, the guys were, it's just not on each other's wavelengths. There's kind of moments where maybe somebody should have, ran in behind, and then the pass comes short and the player's already made the move. How many times do you see stuff like that today? Like,
I mean, there was even one time I think where Mazzani and Yuan chased the same ball.
Yeah,
they
made the same run, the exact same run down the flank, and it's just there was no cohesion there, and you can have as many talented players on the pitch as you like, but if they can't get them working together, if there's again, it's that word cohesion. If you can't find that, then you will struggle against well-organised sides, and that was certainly the case here. And it was just the atmosphere really turned as well. There's been a couple of times this season where Hibs have been booed off, and it's maybe it's just kind of frustration spilling out in a game. Perhaps that they maybe should have got a better result in when they played a bit better. But today it was it was proper anger. Today there was, I mean, even after the second goal, you seen. I did see a fair few people get up and just think, right, that's back to the pub, and you can really blame them, to be honest, because I think even 2-0 down, it's still salvageable. But I mean, there've been absolutely really no sign that game was going to turn, and it only continued to go one way. And again, it's a result that now really underlines the struggle for form of late, because I think we've got to go back to December 9th now. For the last time Hibs won in the Premiership, and that was against a Livingston team who are getting battered, pillar to post every single week, and even then, it was a bit of a struggle to get past them.
Yeah, it was a struggle to get past four for a League Two team in the Cup as well.
Yeah, aye. So. I mean, and I think pre-Christmas, there was mitigating factors, the amount of guys that were unavailable, just a kind of general shortage across the board, but. It's kind of getting to that stage now where the squad is looking much healthier. There's been guys brought in, the manager's been backed quite firmly across the transfer window, and it's now getting to the stage where you do need to see quite a rapid turnaround, because the atmosphere today it wasn't good at all.
No, it was
understandable. But I mean, I want to stress, it was completely understandable. The way people reacted, given what they just watched, and that's part of you've got guys, Easter Road's not an easy place to play your football at times. There is an expectation, but that's
for Hibs or for the visiting team.
Well, I'll let you decide on that one. But yeah, it's something that players have to be able to deal with. That kind of expectation that they will get from the crowd, who they were fully justified, as I said, in the reaction today. And So as I said, it's been a kind of poor run of form. As I said, back to 9th of December for a win, and it's that way. But with the upcoming fixtures, they're not getting any easier. You've Celtic in midweek, obviously. There's a train of thought that Celtic will be coming here as a bit of a wounded animal. Obviously, dropping points today against Aberdeen, there's pressure on them to show a reaction. And they very rarely drop points 2 games in a row, Celtic either. And then after that, it's up to Inverness, which is, I think it's looking more and more like a potentially hazardous away day. That, and then after that, you've got Aberdeen, and then I think it's Dundee come Easter Road again. Side that are going pretty well this season.
Yeah.
So it's that way where if the turnaround is going to come, it's going to have to come in the face of some really tough games.
Yeah, and even if you sort of look at the league and think, well, obviously the club sets out its targets at the start of the season, and it's get to the latter stages of both cups, finish top 4, ideally third. It would take several small miracles, I think, for Hibs to finish third this season. Some monumental collapses from other teams.
Mm-hmm.
But you could look at that and say, okay, well, the league might be gone, but could still try and push for top 5 and getting into Europe. But then the cup run obviously becomes a big part of it. Got to the semi-finals of the League Cup, put in a good performance against Aberdeen. We're unlucky not to go through, but that's cup football for you. But now it looks as though, you wouldn't, based on that performance today, even based on the performances we've seen over the last weeks, probably, as you say, going back to the start of December, you wouldn't be backing Hibs to go to Inverness and get a result. Like, you just wouldn't. It's one of those things where, could you even call it a banana skin? I'm not so sure.
No.
And I think that, Hibs, Nick Montgomery needs a reaction from his Hibs players. I would not be at all surprised to see quite a few changes for Wednesday's game, and not just because it's Celtic, but because there were some players today who probably did next to nothing, to show that they deserved to be in the starting lineup. Never mind keep their place, and that's, I don't want to single people out because it was a collectively poor performance.
Could have been anybody really, yeah.
But people like Ellie Ewan, people like Dylan Levitt, players are good and have what it takes to put in a performance, and then it then comes down to, is it like a psychological thing? Is it something else? But you wouldn't sort of really, you wouldn't be surprised if Montgomery made sort of even like 9-10 changes.
Mm-hmm.
It would be fully justified after today's performance, and obviously part of it comes down to looking at him and why he's not able to get more out of this team. You look at managers who are under fire, you look at the players, and quite often, the players aren't playing for the manager. I don't think that's the case at the moment, but it's just something needs to change. I don't know whether it's are some players just too comfortable because they've been assured of starting places for so long without really having to worry about their consistency or their form. Montgomery said afterwards he wasn't 100% sure if he'd have Martin Boyle or Lewis Miller back for Wednesday's game. Paul Hanlon, another one suffering from illness, might not make it back. And that's Nectar Triantis had a difficult debut today. But then you've got 2 20-year-olds at centre half. It's almost unsurprising.
Yeah.
Not the worst player from the pitch by a long shot. Difficult circumstances to come into, and you would hope. I know Montgomery was saying on Friday that Paul Hanlon kind of dragged himself through the 90 minutes at Kilmarnock, and almost seems to have suffered a bit of a setback in his recovery.
Yeah.
But you can imagine someone like him with his sort of background with Hibs, and he would have taken one look at that today and just thought, get the paracetamol out and drag yourself to Easter Road on Wednesday. Just to have something else in there, someone who's capable of kind of, I suppose, just eliciting a sort of reaction out of the team. And I thought it was so telling at one point, I think it was after the third goal went in, that Rory Whittaker, at right back, 16 years old, is trying to motivate the team. Like, that shouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
And that's nothing against Rory, but that
shouldn't be his responsibility.
No, it shouldn't. And that hints at bigger problems. And Montgomery talks about needing to freshen up the squad. Maybe this is what he means. Maybe he's seen something that he doesn't like. Maybe he's seen several things he doesn't like. I think certainly Hibs fans saw several things they didn't like today.
A couple at least.
I just wonder whether this talk of freshening up the squad is not necessarily in terms of footballing ability, but just in terms of personnel. And it's difficult to look at Celtic coming here in midweek and thinking it'll be better, but it surely can't get any worse. And you would hope that there'll be a reaction, that some changes to the personnel. Nathan Mariah Welsh, when he came on, I thought looked really good. He was one I thought might have started today. And I think he probably showed more in his 45 minutes on the pitch than some players have shown over the last few games. And I think he could very well be starting in midweek. And just that, even just little things like that could help Hibs not even gain the upper hand, but just compete and just battle and fight.
Yeah.
And
if you don't do that against Celtic, then
yeah, exactly. And people will say well, if you can't raise your game for Celtic coming to town, then what can you do? But it shouldn't be a case of raising your game for certain opponents. There should be a bare minimum for every game. Never mind the home games. Never mind when you've got several new signings in the door and you're trying to sort of salvage a season that. I mean, Nick Montgomery makes a lot of the fact that when he came in, Hibs were bottom, and it's like, well, yeah, they were, but you look at what he managed to do when he came in. You could call it a new manager bounce. You could call it, I don't know what you could call it, but it'd be good to see more of that again. And as you say, there have been mitigating circumstances. He has had a lot of players out injured. There's the boys on international duty, but I still maintain that you surely should be getting more out of the players at your disposal. And hopefully the players like Martin Boyle can come back in. Paul Hanlon possibly if he's available for Wednesday night, and that can make a difference not just in the short term but in the longer term. But like I say, if after today, I just don't think you could argue with there being sort of wholesale changes for Wednesday night, and I don't think the players could argue either.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously the ambitions at the start of the season would have been again to be challenging for European football, and obviously it's not completely, that's not something it's still tight, in and around there. It's not something that you should, you can write off at this point. But I think if that's the ambition, is to be qualifying for European competition, you can't really then only take 1 point from 9 against teams like St Mirren, who are going to be in and about there battling for it. And it's just games against the likes of Celtic isn't where the season is a success or a failure, but it's to then kind of set yourself up now with the pressure of going into that game where you really need to show something. You really need to be getting points on the board before long. It's a bad position Hibs are putting themselves in at the moment. And
I think I've seen this movie before.
Yeah, aye, I'd imagine so. But it is starting to have that kind of feel a wee bit, isn't it? That getting to Europe in top 6 could even start to become a bit of a slog if this is the the current standard, with no great sign of it turning around. Because I think sometimes when you take last week for example against Kilmarnock, yes, there was poor goals lost. There was a kind of bit of the game that was just not good at all from Hibs, but there was at least moments in it. There was at least something that you could maybe hang your hat on and say, all right, you can build on that. But to go from that there today, where there was just absolutely nothing, it was grim. It was really grim. So I think I'm maybe on that note we should leave it there.
Yes,
because I don't know if there's much else to say about that result and performance today. And obviously I can understand we're seeing a fair bit of frustration in the comments there, and I mean I imagine that'll be repeated all across this evening. So it can only be onwards and upwards from that, I suppose. Celtic to come to town on Wednesday night. We'll have more reaction from today's game on our website. You can read and watch everything from Nick Montgomery, everything he had to say after the game. And as I said, we'll have further reaction on Sunday and then through into Monday. And then we'll be back for the game next Wednesday. But thanks a lot for joining us. I suppose try and enjoy your evening if you can. Might be a bit difficult, I suppose. But yeah, as I said, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.
Cheers.